Well, we are recording. We are on the hour, so I'm going to mute myself out and go into the background.
Yeah, Craig, Carol needs the link from you, she's saying, so she can be on the screen like the rest of you. So Adam, I was just chatting with in Slack. You may want to just tell him what to do or have her do.
I'll resend it to Carol. Okay, I'm just going to go into the background now.
All right, cool. All right, well, great. We'll get started here. I thank everybody to taking time for us to be on this call today. I know, first off, I just hope everybody is safe and healthy. It is some interesting times we're going through right now, and for some more challenging than others. I believe there's this certain anxiousness, this little sense of uncertainty, both personally and for our businesses. And so I wanted us to get together today to really kind of have a discussion, more or less, about what's going on. And I think it's important to set the context because, you know, there's a lot of different information out there, and really deciphering between fact and opinions or different perceptions, I think is part of the challenge that we're all going through right now, especially when we're doing something that we don't have a lot of information on, or there's some conflicting or confusing. So, you know, we wanted to make sure that we were able to address some questions and answers that people that are salt therapy facility members, people that are in the business. Some of you are just standalone salt facilities. Some of you have wellness centers. Some of you have day spas. We have such a cross background of people that are in the business, which I think also makes it a little bit of a challenge for us in terms of looking at things of what is considered an essential business and what are going to be some of the new practices or protocols going forward. So I think it's important that we at least kind of have some discussion around these areas, as well as, you know, what we need to be focused on and what does some of that a new reality look like to a degree. So that's a bit about the context. As Craig was saying, we have a bunch of people on the call, and that we kind of we're structuring the conversation in a particular way. So a lot of you are going to have some questions. And if we wait a little bit towards the end to see if we haven't answered them, I'm sure we will, time permitting, but we're just going to keep going with the dialogue. So with that being said, one of the things that we want to talk about is what really is the impact that COVID-19 and the relationship is with salt therapy. A lot of us have a fundamental understanding about salt therapy and its effect in terms of it being antimicrobial and what it can maybe do for bacteria and viruses. But one of the things that we want to make sure is that salt therapy, halotherapy, has not yet been tested with this COVID-19. So it would be premature for us to make any kind of claims or statements specifically about COVID-19. While there may be some resources and research and things that may lead to some interpretations, I think that's what we need to really be careful about. Dr. Laish, who's on the founding board, who couldn't be on the call today, has recently sent us an article talking about hypertonic saline solutions, a new report that came out not long ago, how it could be promising given how the similarities are with hypertonic saline solution and dry salt therapy. There's an infectious disease doctor in Omaha who was the one who first found the first case in the state with COVID-19. And he's very interested in what's happening with salt therapy. He was referred to us really by a facility owner out there named Jean Cardell, who one of her customers of her facilities went to this doctor, not necessarily COVID related at all, but it was just a whole eye-opening to him about understanding what inhalation is and how pure grade sodium chloride can be making a difference. And in a little bit, I know Dr. Nia Banks is on board with us today, and she's doing a lot of work in some clinical studies or pilot studies soon on some of the skin conditions and how it's affected by halotherapy. So the first thing we just wanted to talk about, and I know that Cheryl has been researching some of this, some of the Module 2 program talked a lot about lung function in the Certified Halotherapist program. I know that she's getting ready to roll out Module 3 this week. But there's been some dialogue around, some of you have even asked about these masks coated with sodium chloride. And there is some interesting evidence that's emerging about how the salt inside these masks are absorbing the droplets, which is really how COVID-19 so far is being able to spread. And that's what the social distancing is about. That's what the surfaces are about. And so it's these droplets that contain the virus. And what salt actually does, according to one of the studies, and I'll have Cheryl speak about it in a moment, is how it absorbs the moisture. And then what happens is the salt is dissolving, it recrystallizes. And from that recrystallization, it starts to break apart the virus. So in terms of salt therapy inside of a room or into a chamber or a booth or whatnot, there is some evidence to suggest that these dry salt particles in the air, if they absorb in the air, they will fall to the ground because of the gravity and the very nature of how it absorbs. Once that's on the ground, let's say, right now, we haven't tested this in our salt rooms, but there's a theory about this particular research. And so, Cheryl, I'm gonna, if you can unmute and kind of address a little bit more about what you know about more, because you were the one that really saw the back end of this research that really has been around for a couple of years right now.
Yeah, I'd be happy to talk on that. So, so from my research, as I was working through Module 2, prior to COVID crisis coming out, I came across a research article that was published in 2016 from a research scientist in Alberta, Canada, who was studying the effectiveness of taking an N95 mask and coating the front of it with table salt. And what he found was the salt molecules with the jagged edges that they have in their structure, as the dummy that had on the mask, as it was breathing in and taking the viruses toward the face, the virus itself, the cell would be cut by these jagged edges. And so the cell within 5 minutes would land onto the crystal, and from your breathing, it would be recrystallized, and basically within 30 minutes, it would be non-viable. So it was pretty interesting. This was back in 2016. They spoke about potential pandemic, that they could make these masks, mass produce them, set them aside. And here we are present day with the COVID-19 virus crisis. So it's pretty interesting. And then I dug a little bit deeper, came across several other articles that also used, there's one that used natural sea salt particles and things of that nature, all in the same concept. So here we are dealing with the crisis. Everyone's told to be wearing these masks. What do we do? So I think salt therapy will be able to grab a hold of this and move forward and take this concept and build on it. This research that has been done and solidified and validated, and I think we can roll into it with a little bit deeper knowledge of the effects of salt and how it can help in that respect.
Yeah, and I know, Cheryl, still for people though, we got to also make sure, I know Carol is looking to come on, but when I talked to her the other day, we want to give the right messaging out there too. So we can't at this point say that by being in a salt room and the salt aerosol grabbing hold of these droplets is going to kill this virus in 30 minutes or less.
Right.
We can't say that.
Right,
And
exactly. And this was the research that was done specifically with these masks. Yeah, there was no mention of a halotherapy room or whatnot. It was basically the study regarding the salt on the masks.
right,
So you can't make that assumption.
right. And so I know that for some people that have asked questions about this, with regards to, people that have salt on their floor.
Mhm.
And if they have somebody in a salt room, and what is it that you can then say or do about the salt being on the floor?
Right. So we're, using these studies to kind of gather more data. There definitely needs to be more research done on that, to see if the effectiveness is the same as the virus coming in toward the mask or the virus coming out and going onto the floor. So we'll
Right.
have to definitely see some research, collected back with that as well.
Sure, thanks. Part of that, the same thing, and I know some of you are looking at then, what becomes, for those of you that don't have salt on your floor as a decor, like the loose salt, the question becomes, like in a normal facility, you're cleaning out your facility, right? You're now going to be taking a look at the type of sanitation and the disinfectant. But in terms of the salted floors that we have, there's really not a way to necessarily then disinfect. So without knowing how long it really lasts on a floor that has loose salt in it, I think it really is that much more important for people in terms of wearing booties and things of that nature. Obviously, it's on the floor like it is anywhere else, and I think certain sanitation needs to be applied. And I know, Shimon, I know that you were taking a look at, other people are wondering, since we're talking about the sanitation and disinfectant, if somebody had a UV light, or if you can explain a little bit about the UV light range, because some people are thinking, if I have a UVC light up in my room, one, does that work? And what are the challenges? Obviously, there's some safety concerns. Two, is there a way to know if it's going to be effective? What people would need to understand about that.
Okay, so for UV, the way UV disinfection works, it needs to be a very specific spectrum. UVC is the wavelength that you need in order for it to disinfect any viruses. UVC doesn't actually reach the Earth at all. It's blocked in the ozone layer. Therefore, no cells or organisms on Earth are equipped to actually deal with it, and it basically breaks apart the cells. It's very effective for killing viruses, but it's also dangerous for any cells, like your skin cells. It can give you skin cancer, or it can give people sunburn within minutes. So that's only specific for UVC. So people who market UV lights for disinfection, but they're just not giving you any precautions, it's just a blue light like a black light, it's not going to be very effective or effective at all for disinfection. So any UV lights for disinfectant need to be specifically UVC. The other part with UVC is if you're using it to disinfect a room, like let's say it's being marketed so that you purchased a light, you put it in your room, and then you go ahead and after a session you turn on the light. The UV lights have to reach surfaces. So if you have salt covering all your surfaces and on the chairs, the UV light's not reaching the surface, so it's not accomplishing anything with the disinfectant. Same thing with the air itself. If you're trying to disinfect the air, but there's salt suspended in the air because the salt hasn't settled to the ground, the UVC isn't reaching everywhere. There's specific protocols on how long it has to be exposed for. It's not as simple as just turning on a light. They do sell some kits. It can be as a UV light meter, or they have like almost like a test strip where you put the strip on a surface, you turn on a UV light, it changes color when it receives enough energy to actually be disinfected. So UVC is going to be hard to use for salt rooms to clean surfaces inside the rooms, mainly because if you're trying to clean surfaces with the UV light, you're going to have to clean the salt off first. So you might as well disinfect it as you're cleaning your salt off the surfaces. It can be helpful in like air purifiers. You'll see a lot of air purifiers advertise that they have UVC light inside it. That works, and the reason why it works is because the UV light's shielded, so there's no exposure to people. You can put that inside your room before the halo generator. If you have a facility where your halo generator is mounted inside a closet, you can put an air purifier in there. It can be UVC, it can be a HEPA filter. That will remove filters from the air, and the way the rooms are designed is so that once the when it's taking in the fresh air through the halo generator, pumps it into the room, you have a constant airflow of clean air that gets pushed out through your exhaust fan and the duct over there. So that's one good way to keep pure air coming in and not have stale air coming, just staying in your room with viruses and all that. But UVC in general, to rely on that for disinfecting rooms isn't very reliable unless you clean the surfaces first, but then you might as well just clean your surfaces with the disinfectant to disinfect your room.
Yeah, great, thanks. I know there'll be some other questions and some ways that we can provide people with some information and back up and find out about some of this stuff that's going on. But clearly, we want to move into doing more research. And one of the things that, because of what's been occurring over the last month and a half or so, is that we starting to have the ear of certain people. There are some doctors paying attention. I know that Cheryl Krouse is really expanding a lot more into some of the research direction for the Salt Therapy Association. She's already been doing some background information on research money and grants and things that are out there available for particularly studying the COVID-19. We've secured equipment and other things to work with doctors and hospitals, and there's some interest. So, but Cheryl, maybe you want to just add a little bit more to that about some of the things that you're going to be focusing on. And so as we can start, I think, to validate what's going on, and I think part of the frustration a lot of people are feeling is, here's something that really works for people. There is anecdotal evidence. There are some clinical studies and such. Now, how do we, that we have the ear of people, how do we really take, halotherapy, salt therapy industry into the next level?
Right. So, so I've been diving in and doing the modules, building out the 12 modules for the certified heliotherapist training. And with each one, it builds on the last. So everyone can have that kind of understanding and deep down knowledge of where salt therapy came from and where it's going. So due to the COVID crisis, there's been a lot more funding being accessible for different studies and things like that. So my background is in cardiopulmonary rehabilitation. So I would really love to go after funding to get some research grants so that we can start to do more of the research testing in the States. We have a lot of research studies that are overseas and they're fantastic, but I'd really love to see some facilities start to take the data that they're acquiring from some of these patients coming back from having COVID-19 and gathering that data so that we can put forth more information of the efficacy of salt therapy in a positive direction, and looking around pulmonary rehabilitation, taking that next step into not only salt rooms or salt caves, but maybe marrying that and looking deeper into a rehab type of setting to gather that data.
Very cool. So folks, we'll be getting more information to you about some of the things that we're looking for. We are looking for, there's going to be just to give you a parameter, there's a lot that goes involved in doing any kind of test. In a moment, I'd love to hear from Dr. Banks, but to really do a test right, there are things to understand. One, you have to secure the virus and actually get it. There's protocols for that. Doing studies, randomized studies, or clinical studies. There are certain protocols. So while we need to be focused in doing that, and there are people that are interested in that, there are pilot studies that people are talking about doing. But even more so, as I was talking to Carol last week, we all have great stories. There are stories from our people who visit our facilities who get tremendous value. And I know that we really gotta get more of that together in an organized way, because that's a lot about what's going to help influence the environments around us. Dr. Banks is somebody that just I became friends with. She was a client. She's in Baltimore. She's a plastic surgeon in the Baltimore area. And Dr. Banks, if you could just kind of give a little bit more about your background, because this is the first time you're meeting part of this community of the Salty tribe, of which you're now a part of. So if you
hi, everybody. It's great meeting everyone virtually, and thanks for inviting me, Leo. I'm learning a lot. As you said, we just began with our salt therapy journey maybe a couple months ago. I opened a wellness spa in Baltimore in the Ritz-Carlton Residences. And that spa is a wellness spa. It offers 3 pillars. One pillar is modern aesthetics, which is the plastic surgery portion. One pillar is wellness, that includes IV hydration and salt therapy. And one pillar is spa experiences. So we have a full service spa with a medical side. So we opened in February, and we have had a lot of good feedback from the salt therapy room. And we ended up working with Leo because our spa management team that we had come in and help us get the spa started introduced us to the concept of salt therapy. We wanted to offer salt therapy that was done properly and that we had the right parts per million, the right size particles. So we knew that after talking with Leo, this is the right person to work with, to make sure we had the proper halo generator, that we had the mechanics of the room properly, that it was the air conditioning was dampened properly, and he's been great. Since we closed the spa, according to our governor's ordinance, we're in Maryland, so we've been closed for about a month now. We still have the medical side open, and what's been interesting for us is that we do have the ability to offer some services, but not spa services. I do believe that if we had additional studies, that we'd be able to offer halotherapy now as a essential treatment, but we don't have the studies to support that as being other than a spa experience. So it's still considered a spa experience. One of the things that we wanted to do before we were required to shut down was to offer salt therapy sessions at no cost to healthcare professionals, not only for its relaxing properties, but also for the respiratory hygiene properties, making no claims on treating coronavirus, but just allowing medical professionals to have another proactive step in taking care of themselves through this pandemic. And we'll still offer that once the spa is reopened. We have talked about doing some research regarding some skin applications for salt therapy. And as many of you probably know, there are very increasing levels of evidence. The lowest level is expert opinion, which is basically what I can offer now based on the research that's available. And we would like to take that eventually to randomized controlled trials. That's a very top layer. And that's the layer that you need to really get the FDA to approve things, to get things recognized by medical boards as a necessary treatment. And we'll be a long way from there without proper funding, of course. In between that are mechanistic studies, which I don't think we have any. We have some great case reports, and we have some retrospective trials from different countries, but not from the United States.
Right. Now, and I know that we look forward to some of the tests and work and how we do that application. I do think, a lot of the issues that people, to your point, feel a little frustrated about is you do have different business models out there. Mm-hmm. You do have people that are just salt. You do have people that are doing other modalities. So, to qualify a salt therapy provider as essential or non-essential is actually a challenge for many people right now. And, it is something, we need to be prepared for. I know Lori Adams is on the call, and we're going to post something that happened with her. She was just on a video call, a Zoom conference with the former lieutenant governor of the state of Wisconsin, who is being pro-advocate about salt therapy and trying to get definitions covered. I do think that, because there are different business models, we have salt therapy in salons. When you have things that are touch services, massages, facials, some of the things that you're talking about, it does seem that there's going to be some new practices or protocols. So from that perspective, I'm just curious as to what you guys have been thinking about what's going forward. I know there's a lot of other ideas, but I want to hear are there some things specifically you guys are doing?
Well, I feel that now if we had the salt chamber on the medical side of our space, we would still offer it. I mean, quite frankly, it's really a matter of semantics in that as a physician, I can recommend certain therapies. I can't say, I can't make certain claims, but I can certainly recommend it as a maintenance and wellness treatment. So it's really been a matter of semantics and also appearance. Like we want to make sure that our community knows that we're taking the ordinance seriously and that we're not putting anyone at risk. When the spa side is reopened, we are already talking about social distancing in the salt room because we have a salt room, not a chamber. Social distancing in that room. We have 3 chairs in that room right now. Each chair is probably about 3 feet apart. So taking out one of the chairs to make it 6 feet apart. Right now we're only single booking the room. And then also cleaning protocols in that room between treatments.
Great. Yeah, and I think, you know, you mentioned something because some people were looking for this in terms of essential. It is a little ironic, and partly because of the awareness, I would say, of the communities. I think there is different definitions at the federal, state, and local level of what is going to be considered essential. So I think we need to understand that. I know that Cheryl, in her quest for the research that we're doing, is also being having relationships that really are advocates for salt therapy, even going towards with some of the lobbyists, which the former lieutenant governor of Wisconsin, her husband is a lobbyist. So there are people to influence, you know. There are people that, like yourselves, if you had salt therapy, because you're a licensed medical professional, you can be providing it. There are some chiropractors today that is deemed essential. There is acupuncture that falls under the definition of essential. Even some places, medical massage falls under the definition of essential in some places. So I think you're right. We need some of the studies. I know that there is about protocols. I do think that the certified halotherapist program can put some weight behind what people are being educated about. I think that there are guidelines that people need to be following. So to be in compliance and come from a certain place, I think is going to be important. To your point, I think there are some steps too where, you know, getting this to be covered under flexible spending accounts or health savings accounts. Some places that's happening. At some point, insurance, when you look at the benefit and the cost benefit ratio. So there are things like that. And I think collecting the anecdotal testimonials, developing some clinical studies, including quality of life that can be measured, spokespeople and people like yourselves, I think that's going to make a big difference. Yeah. So anyhow, there's things about our business, things about being essential or non-essential. Right now, it's how do we start planning for reopening? Right now, I know a lot of people might be, you know, there's that surviving modality where people are waiting for funds. There's things that are happening with the CARES Act. I don't know where people are at about getting money, receiving money. I've heard, you know, people are, I think, all over the place. I know we sent out communications about different resources, different things to look at the state level. And I think people need to continue to be doing that, working with the people in your community. There's a lot of people starting to really outreach into their community. And we'll come back to some of the practices and protocols. But, you know, I just want Craig, if you can kind of chime in here a little bit. And, you know, I know you've been doing a lot of stuff with how to be proactive now. What are some of the things that people need to be thinking about? Obviously, we want to have a common message, but give a little bit of insight from a marketing perspective. What do people need to be doing around building up their business now?
Sure. Just by way of note, did you check the Q&A? There's about 16 questions come in regards to the first portion of what you were talking about.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of questions coming in that are relevant to what you and Dr. Nia were speaking about, which you might want to cover.
Yeah.
everything's going video. In terms of we as marketers are looking at authenticity as the new norm. So you got to look at what's the most recent thing we saw. Like if you watched the WWE recently, and the big elephant in the room is you're going into the fighters are going into a stadium that's empty and there's nobody around, and they're doing all this stuff, but there's nobody in the stadium, and they're playing to an empty stadium. I mean, it's just totally not authentic. Then you look at your Jimmy Fallons and these guys doing these TV host shows, and they're at home, the kids are running around, all this good stuff. I've always promoted video as the best medium to use for a long time. And I think more so now, because authenticity is going to be that new norm. And it doesn't matter, any flaws you have, just acknowledge any flaws you have. Everybody gets concerned about ums and ahs and what they look like and everything else. I mean, you're basically looking at CPR right now for your business. How, whenever we're allowed to reopen, what do you then do? Database is king. First and foremost, if you don't have a database, you are at some form of a minus here. You have to have if you have an existing database, then video is going to be your best friend to rekindle that database. And I'll give you some examples of what to use in terms of video in a second. So if you've got a database, then video is going to rekindle everything. If you don't have a database, then you're going to have to turn some sort of marketing back on. We were doing some tests with Facebook with a few beta testers in the salt therapy world, and if you want to be any further beta testers, let me know, because I'm more than happy to set up a few accounts of people. We were generating, I forget what the numbers were, we're generating leads for salt facilities at around, I think it was $2 or $3 a lead. That's somebody who's filled out a full form of information, which is beyond the lead. It's more, hey, I want a consultation type of thing. So it's not just a name, an email, and a phone number. It's a more qualified lead, let's say, somebody who raises the hand and say, I want a consultation. So if you don't have a database, how are you going to go out into the community? Then the only way is really through advertising to the community. And just don't think that marketing or spending money on paid media is any way something that you shouldn't be doing right now. All marketers are spending more on their marketing right now. And I know a lot of businesses are closed, but when you can reopen, the marketing paid media right now, Facebook ads, Google ads, is like half the price. So you can buy a lot of advertising with a lot less dollars right now. So that'd be something that you, from a paid media point of view, you want to be straight onto as soon as you can open your doors. Because if you don't have a database, there's no other way. You can go the marketing 101 route with flyers locally, make connections with other business owners. I just think it's going to be such a everybody's in such a panic to get reopened, and everybody's like running around at a million miles an hour. Not everybody's going to have the attention to leverage each other's business databases locally, which that would be a normal business practice that I have. I have a bunch of clients working in my business. You can cross promote and do things of that nature, which we call leveraging other people's clients, but that, I think everybody's going to be too busy doing that. So the two number ones for me are definitely going to be leveraging my own database. And if not, then if I don't have a database, I'm going to be going immediately out with paid media. And my medium of choice for doing that would be immediately Facebook advertising. So when you look at video, then I'll be doing Facebook Live. Facebook Live gives like 6 times you get 6x the interactions with Facebook Live. You get 10 times more comments with Facebook Live. You get users spend 3 times longer watching Facebook Live than regular uploaded video. So you can leverage with Facebook Live, but a lot of people might not have a lot of users. So you got to jump on things like Zoom calls like this, which is technology you can use. You can use a new platform that we're playing with, which is called StreamYard.com. So I definitely look at Hi, Carol. We can look at StreamYard.com. Zoom calls like this, uploading to doing a Facebook Live. And then I'll be looking at tools like Vidyard, vidyard.com or bomb.com. Now those are tools where you can send a little video clip in an email, because everything needs to be sort of like personalized. It's that personal, authentic touch that if I had the time right now, I'd be sending a personal video message to every one of my clients in my database saying, look, we know the circumstances right now. This is what's happening. We're going to be going, we're going to be getting in action soon. So you can send those personal email videos using Vidyard or bomb.com, and that's very personal or authentic. So leveraging video like this gets a lot of questions answered, helps with explaining what's going on, what's happening next. But if you don't have a database, then you're going to have to go with the Facebook ads. I mean, emailing's okay, but you've got to be leveraging all mediums. You've got email, you've got Facebook Messenger, you have text, you have the ability to pick up the phone, you've got direct mail, but you do need the database for that. And I'll be leveraging all those mediums to restart my business once I can reopen. If you don't use all those mediums, and you just use email, you're at a major disadvantage. Did you want to connect and say something, Leo?
Well, obviously we're talking about, there are a lot of people that I've been seeing in the cell therapy facilities and on their Facebook postings, and it's good to see a lot of people doing exactly what you're saying. There's people that are having conversations. I was on with Donna Krouse, where we did something where she's been bringing some of the other like-minded people in her community together on Zoom calls, whether it's the yoga instructor or doing breath work or doing things that are providing value. So, I guess the question too is, while yes, they want to promote being open, and in a moment we'll talk a little bit about what is the right messaging going out right now. We haven't talked about some of the practices and protocols yet, but I do think, there's people that maybe can be looking at ideas of their relaunching or how they're going to be opening up again and bringing people back in.
Well, that's as I say, has to start now. You have to start now with that, and I'll be reaching out to every one of my members with that personal video email style message using bomb or vidyard.com technology. And then these Zoom calls are fine, but not everybody. A lot of people locally have got a lot of other issues going on. But you've got to hit them as soon as you open. If you're not doing paid media, i.e. Facebook ads, Google ads, things of that nature, spending money, then you seriously have to. You've got to go out with a message immediately to start generating leads and getting the phone to ring. You cannot sit, and you have to know what your cost per lead and cost per acquisition is for that. So I spend so many dollars on Facebook ads, I get so many leads, and then so many of those leads turn into paying clients or patients. That's just a mathematical number, but that's marketing. You have to know those two numbers. What does it cost for a lead, a name, email, and information, and telephone number? What does it cost to, how many of those does it take to acquire a new paying client? When you know those numbers, you can then scale totally. You can spend, if $100 produces X, spend $200 produces more, $1,000 produces Y. You can do that all day long or all week long. But I just find a lot of small business owners cringe away from wanting to spend money. They retract, and they start retracting and not wanting to spend. And marketing's like the first thing we shut off. So we stop marketing entirely, when it shouldn't be. It should be, marketing is presented as an investment and looked at as an investment. And there's no other shortage of, you've either got a database or you haven't, or if not, you got to go out and start doing paid media. I think leveraging other people's businesses locally, I think people are going to be so involved in trying to get their own business going that they're not going to be wanting to market you. Like you can leverage other doctors, leverage the type of businesses and yoga studios and connecting with health clubs, and everybody's going to have their own issues going on that they're not going to want to play those games. So that would be my 1-2 strategy. Hit the database with the video techniques, hit my entire audience with personal video messages than I'd be going out with paid media.
Yeah.
I think even the television, the radio, all the local magazines and newspapers, they're going to be bombarded with plenty of other stories that you've probably not got anything unique to get any sort of local traction or local messaging or get seen on television or radio or magazine at all. So I don't think that strategy is going to work immediately out the gate. But yeah, it's all down to, you know, you got to be prolific, not perfect with this marketing stuff. Just like we're doing a video now, I'm in my home office, you're in yours. This day of what does your hair look like, what does your makeup look like, what's in the background, the kids crying, the dogs running around. The new norm is going to be authenticity. It has been for a long time in the marketing world, but more so now. And I think just projecting that, and really, you know, you're talking to humans at the end of the day. So whatever message you're trying to convey, whether it be written, whether it be email, whether it be video, you're talking to humans, and you can't have the big elephant in the room. You got to sort of like acknowledge what's going on in the world. How can I then help you through this process that we're all going through, as opposed to just start, hey, I've got an offer. Do you want 5 sessions for X dollars? You know, that's not authentic. That's just going into buy mode. You have to bring in and acknowledge the elephant in the room, which is what's going on in the world right now.
All right, cool. All right.
So Carol, can you hear us?
Yes.
Okay, so I know you just jumped on, and Leo's probably got some questions for you. You know, down in the left-hand column, down in the left-hand corner of your screen where you put your mouse, you can turn off your video and your audio on and off down in the bottom left-hand corner. So,
right, they're on.
Right, they're on now. But what we're just doing, when we're speaking, you just like, if we're just me and Leo right now, you turn your video and audio off just by clicking them, and a little red line would go through it. And then that's it. And then when Leo wants you to speak with you, you turn them on, and then you come back on. It just cleans up the screen. That's all. You got that?
So, all right. This is my first one. So
that's perfect. There's going to be technology issues. We're all being authentic, like I was just speaking about.
Yes, I'm very authentic.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and Craig, I think it's a good segue into you know, Carol's on too. I think, to your point, there are things that people need to be doing proactively. People need to be messaging. People, you know, it's a struggle also because there are a lot of people where they don't have the money. You know, people are also worried about, you know, how they're going to be paying the rent and other things. So, you know, for many people, you know, it is an uncertain time. And I think that's one of the messages that I know I try to convey. And I think what we need to convey to people out there, our customers, our consumers, is how do we address what's the concerns in the background? You know, what are people going to be concerned about? You know, is it safe? Is it clean? Yeah, can I trust? You talk about authenticity. Is there any certainty? Is it professional? Coming across knowledgeable, competent, confident? I think there is something that we need to be looking at doing, and the right messaging. And I know that part of that is that really what is the impact that this is going to have on the way that we're doing things. And part of that, Craig, is what is the messaging? How are we going to talk about respiratory hygiene? Obviously, as I talk to people, and I'm going to be curious, I want Cheryl to say something about this, is what is that message? You know, what is that message? If we can't say salt therapy isn't going to kill COVID-19. I know that some people are asking questions on the Q&A that we'll get to as well around this. So what is it that we can say? You know, we do want people to focus in on their health. There are stories to tell. There's one that we're going to post that Lori was just telling this former lieutenant governor about a cancer patient and the difference that salt therapy made. Cheryl was the one her and I spoke a couple of weeks ago, and then again about a week ago, regarding how do we create a library of these narratives? You know, that's, to your point, Craig, when people see other people, or you have that video testimonial, or people being authentic about the value that salt therapy provides in their life. I think that's a big part of it.
You can never have enough testimonial social proof, we call it. Social proof. If everybody says it does some good or helps or solves this or help with X, Y, and Z, you can't have enough social proof. And more important now, I keep preaching about just getting your phone out. You don't need any specialized equipment. Just get your phone out. Doesn't matter if it's wobbling, moving, doesn't matter about ums and ahs. Again, the more authentic, the more real and believable it is. But why do people do business with people? They do business with people who they know, like, and trust, which we now extend to know, love, and trust. And so really people are doing business when they trust and believe what you're saying. So first of all, they have to believe with what you're saying is actually true, you know, and that they actually trust you. So you got to believe first that it's going to help and work for me, and they have to trust what you're saying. So those are the most important messages to get across in marketing. And the best way of doing that, I mean, you can verbalize it in many words as you want, send as many emails and texts. Remember I mentioned, you got to be using email, you got to be using Facebook Messenger, you got to be using texting, you got to be using the phone, and you got to be using direct mail, getting letters out into the mail. You know, people don't get enough mail these days. But the best leverage is through other people's experiences. You know, other people's experiences and getting that written either in writing, reviews, video testimonials. That will certainly help. But that helps the equation of people ending up buying and pulling the trigger and buying a course or an individual session. But this CPR, which I call it, when you're reopening, you've got to go out there with a fast message and leverage all these techniques I've just mentioned to create as much noise to your existing database. And if you've got dollars to do paid media, you can do that. If you don't have the dollars to do paid media, then you're gonna, hopefully you've been building a database, because data is king. You have to have the database. Otherwise, you're nobody to reach out to.
Great.
And then you're back to marketing 101, which could be putting flyers out, leaflets out, little business cards on cars, dropping leaflets out, doors to door. You can go back to marketing 101, and we're going to be seeing a lot of that. You're going to be seeing a lot more marketing 101 for these reasons, which are back to door hangers, flyers, handing out business cards, and these types of things.
All right, cool. Cheryl, if you can pop your video back on, I just want to, we'll come back, but I know a lot of people may not know you by name or face, but I don't know, you can click your video down below. For those of you don't know Cheryl, Cheryl is the president of Halomed in North America. They've been a corporate sponsor of the Salt Therapy Association. Dr. Tribunskaya was one of the original founding board members when we first created this. So Cheryl, thanks for joining the call. I don't know how much you've been on or listening. I know we're gonna wanna talk a little bit more some protocols, but I just wanted to get some of your feedback about what is it that you get concerned about with all of this right now?
Can you see me?
Yes, a bit.
Okay.
Move you down so you see more of your face.
Yeah, you
Up or down?
Yeah,
Down or up?
No,
you go
Oh,
up.
up?
There we go.
Okay. All right. You can see how big my nose is. I think the message is so variable in terms of the market and the type of place. You know, if you have a salt therapy room that is also a part of a med spa, you know, you're going to sort of be going in, I think you have a different market if you have a lot of people coming to you for aesthetic treatments. If you have a salt room where you have like a very general population, you may have, you know, the whole spectrum in terms of age range and different types of people. And let's say you're basically a salt therapy room. Maybe you do some other things, but your main focus is the salt therapy. I think, you know, there you have a lot of people that are going to, you know, post quarantine are going to be coming to you for the very same reasons that they were coming to you before the quarantine. And that's where, you know, I mean, I know the whole big questions right now are about quarantine, or excuse me, COVID-19. But I think that we really, I mean, if I had a salt room, the thing that I would be very focused on would be, it would still be allergies, asthma, chronic bronchitis, sinusitis, you know, all of those respiratory conditions that salt therapy already has a very established strength in. So my messages would really focus on that type of thing. I also think that we have to be very aware of what the people in our market are going through right now. I mean, unemployment is so very high. People have diminished resources. This is going to be a whole new normal. It's not going to be what it was before. And so I think it's going to be very important that a salt room, and you know, I have salt rooms like in small towns in Michigan, small towns in Ohio. I think it's going to be very important to be a part of that community. People go to the salt room for the experience of halotherapy, but they also go to engage. And how the owners, because I have such a wide spectrum of salt room owners, people who have entered into this for different reasons. But time and again, the customers I have, they're very genuine, very authentic. They're the ones, they are very good. They're on very close relationships with their customers. And I think it's a very important time to explore, if that hasn't been a big part of your business model, now it needs to be. I agree completely with the need to communicate vigorously with your clients, but I also think everything has to be centered on them and their needs at this time. It's a time of high insecurity, and yet it's also a time of tremendous hope, because we're going through a seismic shift. And there are a lot of things about the way the world was operating before this happened that were just, you know, really unpleasant things of life that you had to deal with. Now, a lot of those things are going to be a lot more optional. People are shifting their lifestyle in such a significant way. This is where I think salt therapy is so wonderfully positioned, because, you know, whereas people may not, and who knows what the future is, I don't have a crystal ball, but, you know, if what the general business reporting comes to be true, you know, people are not going to be buying pairs of shoes that they don't need, or, you know, clothing, other material goods. But experiences will continue to be important. And that's why I think going for salt therapy should be a full experience, not just of going into the room, but from the minute you walk in, the whole way that you're treated and the way that you are related to as another human being.
Yeah, very good. Well said. Cool. Well, and I think, you know, as you mentioned, you know, we are going into, I'm looking at some of the questions here and everything as people coming in. So yes, we are recording this, so this will be available So if you need to pop off, then if you can stay on, great. But, there's a question about what is this new future? What is the new normal going to look like now? You got to do kind of look at it from the customer's experience. Are you going to have a greeter at the door? Are you going to have a hand sanitizer dispenser right there?
Right.
Are you going to be, someone asked, well, can you ask questions? Screening. Right now, that is going to need to be a guideline, I think, that would have to get established. Because right now, you got to be very careful about intaking information with HIPAA and medical information and things. I don't think that you're going to be able to need to create a new liability form necessarily, or disclaimer form. I don't know if one of the answers is, do you need to take, temperature readings before allowing people to come in or not? So there is some uncertainty about what is going to be governing some of this. There are some interesting technologies out there. So as we're reopening, this reverts back to earlier with Dr. Banks also saying, if we're following protocols, if we're doing things, if we're putting up the right signs, if you're informing people about the types of disinfectants that you're using or what your protocols are and that they're established and you have things in place, I think that's part of it. Some may need to look at the physical distancing in a salt room, in your reception area, different comfort levels. Should your staff wear masks? I don't think the guests will be, our customers wearing masks. They won't get the benefit of being in a salt room. But these are some questions that we don't have that certainty on, which is what we want to be moving towards and having those kind of guidelines. Some have asked about staggering schedules. So depending on the size of your salt room, if you are an hourly session, or if you have a small room or a salt booth, how are you going to manage traffic flow coming into your facility? Are you going to allow strangers to be in the same salt room? Or is it going to be just friends and family and just private sessions? So these are the questions I think that we're all in the process of figuring out. If you have a kids' room, can the kids play in the salt?
Right.
Right now, the question is, how long does it live? We know how long COVID has been somewhat studied for on different types of surfaces, in cardboard, in the way that the nature of salt is. But the truth is, we haven't tested it specifically, this strain, on the salt on the floor. So we can't really make that claim. So can you disinfect it? Not really. Salt on the floor. That's going to be a difficult process. But at the same time, people are walking around and we're not necessarily transmitting it from our feet. I think you do need to make sure about how people are touching surfaces, and that you're going to really need to really be there in terms of everything that people touch, from having a stylus pen, if you use a square for taking credit cards, or, you got to start thinking this through all the way for what people are using and how to use those kinds of things. So I do think that there's going to be some things around sanitation and disinfectants, hand sanitizers upon entering and having available inside the rooms, how to minimize surface touching. Where can you have touchless payments, paying attention to the disinfection of the door, and all the things that we've been talking about. So you really got to create some protocols around how frequently are you sanitizing or disinfecting between sessions and customers. As we talked about the disposable booties, I think a key part, and I'm going to have Shimon jump in here for a second too, is having a proper air exchange between sessions. I think, as you talked about before, I think you want to look at adjusting what temperature your salt rooms are in. I think having blankets and sharing blankets probably shouldn't be happening. I think there are things that you may want to take a look at around changing your AC filters or HEPA filters. Shimon, I know that you've been studying a little bit about some of the disinfectants and things, and I know people are asking, really what should they be looking for and what should they be using? So if you can comment a little bit about that, that'd be great.
Okay, sure. The primary way that this virus is transmitted, it's important to note, is primarily through touch surfaces. There's a lot of concerns talking about droplets and staying 6 feet apart, but generally speaking, the evidence shows that people touching surfaces and then someone else touching it is really how it spreads. So disinfecting between sessions will be very important. And then also disinfecting daily the whole facility and all high touch surfaces. Because it doesn't take very long to take a Lysol wipe, walk around your facility and wipe down every doorknob, your cash register, the phone handles, the light switches, even the screen that you touch to turn on and off your machine. You want to disinfect that, frequently because someone's touching that all the time. Like Leo said, also, if people are touching the same touch screen for the POS system, or if they have a membership program and you want to wipe that down, you can offer a stylus as well so that customers don't have to be touching it. You can have even a bunch of styluses there and disposable ones. For disinfection, what disinfectant to use, the good thing, this virus isn't very durable. It has a lipid layer, which is basically a layer of fat that contains the whole thing, and standard soap will disintegrate any type of fat. That's why dish soap works on oils and cooking, because it just breaks down the fat. So just dish soap would work. Most soaps work. If you want to get disinfectant, you can buy Lysol, Clorox. They're hard to get now, but if you do look for viricide or bactericide, that'll be the technical term for it, you can find commercial grade disinfectants that no one's shopping for, can always think to look for that. They tend to come concentrated and you'll have to read instructions on how to dilute them, but that's pretty easy to find. They're good to use. Some of them are no rinse, so you can just spray them on and leave them there, and that's all you have to do. Do pay attention to the instructions. Some of them will give you a dwell time, which is how long does the surface have to stay wet for it to actually kill the virus. So that can be anywhere from instantly to 10, I've seen 15 minutes. So just read the instructions, just like most things, and then you'll know what to do. With regards to the room itself, keeping people apart and social distancing is important. You definitely don't want them wearing masks, of course. HEPA filters, which most people have just to keep the salt inside, and HEPA filters, you'll have them inside your AC system. That's enough to catch the virus. That's all you need. But again, critical is going to be all the high touch surfaces to touch it down. And one important part is, besides for doing it, tell your customers what you do. Hang up a sign, let them know what you do. You can even send out email blasts so that they know, and they'll begin to trust you, and they know that you're taking care of it when they see that you're cleaning and you're actually paying a lot of attention to this. Again, for the UVC, I've seen some other questions come in on that. UVC does work for viruses, but you have to be very careful to follow the procedures for it. You can't expose any humans to UVC because it's dangerous to the eyes and to the skin. If you're going to use it for surfaces, follow the instructions on how far it has to be and what the amount of time it is that it has to be exposed to the surface. Make sure the surface is clean. If there's any salt on the surface, then the UVC won't be effective at all. If you're using it to disinfect the air, you can't do that during a session, because people are there and that's dangerous. You'll have to do it between sessions. You'll need a remote switch. You'll put the UVC in the room, walk out of the room, lock the door, have a remote switch, make sure no one walks in, because it's very dangerous to be exposed to it. But again, HEPA filters would be enough for the air. Same thing with cleaning the surfaces. If you're going to be cleaning the surfaces from salt, use a standard detergent. You can use Lysol, you can use any disinfectant as long as you follow the directions. It's not a very durable virus, so almost any disinfectant will work for it, even if it doesn't specify coronavirus, or if it doesn't say this particular one, because it's new, so it's not on product labels yet. Generally speaking, the CDC said that all disinfectants will work for it.
And then, so if I understand you correctly, in between sessions as a protocol, and I see some people that, writing about already putting some things in place. So we'll kind of consolidate some of these comments and, report back out. I know that to what you just mentioned, Shimon, there are some products that you might recommend. I know people are looking for that. I know everyone's scrambling to find different things. Some might have, I don't know if they have any sensitivity in terms of what they smell or the duration. So I think that's a consideration between sessions. I know people are going to be looking at scheduling, salt sessions with people. So I think those are some of the decisions people need to do. Is there anything else about, I know that we've talked about the salt on the floor. Do people need to change that out now? I mean, I know we're reacting to this COVID-19. There's people who, before this happened, they were coming and they might have had symptoms and other types of things going on. And, that's how life was. And I don't want to downplay this COVID-19, but, is there anything, and to Carol's point, much different? I know it's different things that we need to do. Some of it may be from a perceived value until perception, in terms of knowing more about this. But is there anything people should be doing about the salt on the floor or anything else special?
It's hard to say because you can't, get a mop and mop it. You can't really clean it that way. There is the possibility that the salt suspended in the air, and when people exhale, the salt in the air will capture those droplets and kill it, much the way that the masks work. The theory in that is that, like Cheryl explained, if the droplets touch the actual salt that's suspended in the air, it dissolves into the salt dissolves into the virus droplets, and then when the salt recrystallizes, it actually breaks down the structure and cuts it. So there is that possibility that actually works that way. But other than that, for the salt on the floor, booties will be important. And then again, for kids, just don't have a kids room where they can touch the salt. I wouldn't hang up a sign preventing people from touching the salt, because generally people don't reach down to touch the floor in general. But there's not much you can do to disinfect the salt.
Yeah. I know some people are asking about other products out there, air purifiers and things of that nature. I do think there's a whole aspect of clean air therapy. I know you mentioned before about what people may be doing in the room where the halo generator is, taking care of their HVAC system and things of that nature. But everybody should really know, temperature adjusting, if you've been keeping a colder room, I think a warmer room is going to be more beneficial for the therapy. Not humidity though, so you don't want to be doing anything on the humidity. But there is a lot more that people should be doing just to be overall. In terms of the salt on the floor, what I was going to say is that I don't think people are disinfecting the regular floor every time somebody walks on it. So while what you're saying, we don't know how long the virus lasts on the salt, if at the end of the day, people aren't touching it, they have disposable booties. The question is, dealing with a customer, is there any risk? And I don't know how we answer that. I don't think we can ever guarantee. Somebody posted this question and sent this in, but it's like, how can we be sure, this is a customer talking, how can we be sure that we won't get sick from the person or the people that were just sitting in here? Right?
Right. So there's never a guarantee that anyone won't get sick just walking down the street. We can't guarantee that. As facility owners, you can take the steps to disinfect your facility, like we discussed on wiping down high touch surfaces, air purifiers, and the rest of the facility. But you can inform your customers, this is what we do, and this is what we guarantee that we do to take care of it, but you can't guarantee an effect on how the customer will get sick, because, how do you know that someone walking by outside didn't sneeze and the droplets carried in the wind? We don't have any control over that.
Very good. So I want to get to some of the questions, and then I want to see if Carol or anybody else has anything else to say. But when we talk about a warmer room, again, you don't want to have a room where people are necessarily sweating, but you don't need it cool for halotherapy to be effective. And it's not going to impact the salt floor or the salt wall decor. It's not about temperature, it's really about humidity. So you just want to manage the humidity. The better air product, somebody asked about probiotics in the air or the system. Again, while there's some evidence around what it can work on, we don't know if it can work on anything like COVID-19. There is some evidence about cleaning out your ductwork. I know that there are people that are doing that. They're looking at different systems to put in a UVC light in their air handler. And so there's some different technologies that if you're looking at really getting into some of this, there are some other things that we can explore offline about that. Yes, disinfecting everything, the bathroom, anything that people touch, you got to start looking at it like you were child-proofing your house. You know, sometimes you weren't really aware about certain things until you had a kid. I'm now personally sharing. But now you want to start looking at things, and I don't think we realize how many things that we're touching. So I think that's something that you just want to be paying attention to in terms of what is going on. We'll find out some source materials about some of the disinfectants. There are some actual natural ones that are out there, some that have been on the market that we can share about with it also. More about the disinfectants.
An interesting thing about the high touch surfaces, one easy way, because it's hard to know what you're touching, like Leo mentioned, you can put chalk on your hands or UV dye and just walk around your facility as if you were a customer, and that marks the surfaces you touched. It's commonly used. Things like people don't even think about, like phone chargers. Do that, just experiment and walk around your facility paying attention to the touch areas that people touch. That's the critical parts that you want to make sure you disinfect frequently.
Great. Yeah, I mean, the other thing I would just say, folks, you know, people are asking, you know, a lot of, you know, to Carol's point, to what Craig said too before about the authenticity of everything. I just think we just need to be cautious right now. I still think this is something that's evolving. I think we're going through the initial stages at first when people kind of went into panic mode and we didn't know what to expect. And now here we are, and a lot of media, a lot of noise, a lot of stuff is out there. I'm not here to have a real opinion about how things have been handled or anything else. I just think it's a learning process that we need to continue to share, continue to build the tribe up. There are some things that we're looking at now doing is where we're going to be taking some of this information and coming up with some recommended guidelines from the STA that those of us really can stand behind, like Cheryl with Halamed and Ashley Steiner and people that are in the industry and some of the operators that are on the call today, the owners. A lot of people have been doing a lot, and one of the things that we want to be able to do is really leverage this. I do think that there's some strong messaging to go out about the benefits of halotherapy, and I think we got people's ear, and it's an opportunity to educate and provide a lot more awareness. And so that's why, as Craig said, we got to keep messaging. We got to get things out there. We're going to have some new educational cards coming up, as well as some updated ones that talk about practices and protocols and about COVID-19. The Certified Halotherapist program is rolling out, the third one. We're going to be starting a salt therapy advocacy and lobbyist task team. So we want people that are in the industry, we want your participation. This is really about those of you that want to get active in really looking at who do we need to talk to, who do we need to network with, what are the conversations that we need to have to really advocate for salt therapy. Also, we want to put a team together to start looking at the Salt Therapy Association Conference 2020. As many of you know, we had to postpone and cancel the symposium in Poland trip. But right now it's too early to tell about StayCon 2020. That's going to be in September. I would love to think that that would be happening. A lot is changing on a regular basis. And I know that we kind of live in the now a lot. And there is some uncertainty, but one way or the other, whether it's live or live this way, we want to continue to build the industry and keep moving forward. Salt therapy, there's a lot more questions. I want to be cognizant of people's time. And so we'll take some of these and get back to you. Craig, is there anything more that I need to address or anything that stood out as you were looking through any of those?
No, I would. I mean, I know there's plenty of people still on, and I think it's useful to have the recorded session after the event. That if you don't have to jump off yourself, then you could
No,
probably
I
jump
can
through
fit.
this. I mean, people
Yeah.
like to stay around, and it'd be useful to have all the. I think the collective questions that are showing up in the 30-odd questions here would be a collective sort of view that if you want to just run through
Yeah.
them, and if
Yeah.
anybody and take a Q&A session now, and if other panelists maybe have to jump off, but if you're fine with time, I'd do the Q&A.
Sure. Great. All right, before we do that, Carol, is there anything else to add? I know I'm going to answer questions, but if you're there.
Just a second. Am I on?
Yeah.
Can you see me?
Now you can. There you go.
Okay, I can't see myself. So anyway, I just would like to add, and you've touched on it, but one more thing, one more reminder, and that is ventilation. Absolutely, the salt room has to be a negative air pressure space. I don't know what it's like for other equipment, but for ours, it's got to be in a very low level negative air pressure state during a session, and then afterward, it has to be powerful enough for a full air exchange so that every session starts with completely fresh air. So, you know, now we are going to all have to think about, well, what kind of air is being supplied into the salt room?
Mm-hmm.
And how clean is that air? You know, if you have a salon or you have other activities, you know, that's going to be something to consider. Every salt room owner is going to need to think about what are the requirements and regulations for their locality. You know, people come to us with a lot of those questions. We could give general guidelines, but again, you may need to work with specialists in ventilation in your community. You know, all the different halo generator companies can give you specifications for what's required for that type of equipment. But there's going to be a real need to follow through and have this matter of ventilation be at your easy grasp. You need to know, okay, my fan runs at, you know, X number of, it can move X number of cubic feet per minute. My salt room, my interior volume of my salt room is, you know, 225 square feet. And, you know, just all of these things that the technical aspects of it are going to have to become more integrated into your overall understanding of your running of the salt room. And for those who may be running the salt room remotely, maybe they hire staff training is going to be essential.
Yep. Yep. Very good. Yep. You know, having the right setup, obviously, you know, from the very beginning, I know that there are a lot of people that they, in terms from certifications of facilities, it's something that we've talked about, testing. And so I know that we talked a little bit earlier about some of that, but let me just look at some of these questions. Some of these asking about the temperature for spilia therapy. While it is true that underground and the underground spilia therapy is very different than halotherapy in terms of temperature, humidity levels. Being in the mines of Poland, it's different pressure and different conditions. So salt rooms really can be from in the mid 60s up to higher 70s and beyond. There are also some that mix halotherapy with low levels of infrared sauna. So there's some different things about how temperature impacts halotherapy, and spilia therapy is something completely different. When you say cleaning out.
you want me to go through the questions, Leo, so you can concentrate on the answers? So if anybody's still on, I know we've got nearly 200 people still on here. If you want to ask questions now is the time to do so in the Q&A button at the bottom, and I'll just run through probably from the latest. Let me just run from the top downwards. Yeah. So when building a new location, would you recommend doing a salt floor?
Again, I don't know that people need to be steered off from doing things like that. Right now, there's no evidence. I mean, your floor, whether you have salt on the floor or not, people are walking on it. And so I think that's more of a preference. It's more of a decor. It's part of the experience. I think that's an individual preference, budget, design.
I've seen people soaking masks in salt solution. Would you recommend that?
Well, I know that we talked earlier, and I think Cheryl will make it available, some of the research around that. I'm not recommending people necessarily if that works or not, and what the process is. So I don't think we can say anything about that.
How often should I change the salt on my floor?
That's actually been a good question in terms of changing that. Now there is some more studies that we want to do to really understand what there's to do. I know that there's people that clean their salt floors where you have a kind of a wet vac with a hose or a screen over it and vacuuming up. But there hasn't been a lot of studies to say about necessarily changing it out. And so the nature of salt, some people have changed it out on a once or every other year basis. That's also a preference. I don't know, Carol, what you know about that.
This is going on information that goes way back to the starting of the company. And generally it was advised every couple of years. This goes back 8 years ago. How that applies now, I cannot say. But also there's the matter of, well, how clean is it kept day to day? And I think we have now, completely entered the era of the salt room owners providing shoe covers or foot covers. Or disposable socks or something that can be, perhaps it's a basket of socks that are used and reused, but they are laundered with a bleach solution. Whatever, it all has to be hygienic. But I have been in salt rooms where people were walking around in shoes and in bare feet. And I think we have to consider that time over. Yeah. And so, so in terms of how often should you change it, a lot of that depends on, well, how dirty is it getting, and it is very expensive to change out salt on a salt floor. It's not inexpensive prospect. So again, keeping that salt clean, if that's something that you need in your market, then you're going to have a loose salt floor, and it is very desirable in terms of many of your visitors. But also you're really going to need to be looking at the maintenance of that much more seriously.
Thanks, Carl. Do you know of any owners that have had or recovered from COVID-19?
Well, I know that we have actually, I don't know if Myra's on, there's a few people that have been going through it, and I'll let her share it. She's been sharing a lot of her story in the Facebook group for facility members. So, there are stories about it.
It'd be nice if people could share them in the group, wouldn't it? In the Facebook group. So if anybody does have any cases at all, then do share them for all to benefit from.
Yeah.
There was an interesting, just a segue from that question.
Wait, hold on a second, Craig. So I just saw a note. So Oksana said that she's recovered. So there's some people that have some things. So I definitely think that we need to somehow add that into the group so that we can actually pull some of that narrative as well. Sorry, go ahead, Greg.
Yeah, absolutely. If you any case studies like that, start sharing in the group, because everybody's going to learn from those experiences. Just above that note, there was one from Ivor. Do you have information on what's happening in the Williska salt mine? Do they have any medical trials on the? Have they been doing anything with the COVID-19? Any protocols that they're using? Is there any feedback from them at all?
No, no. And we just know that in some places in Europe, and people are looking at doing different things. I know that Magdalena is doing some studies, but right now they're just having some of their own challenges. I know people are looking at it. There's this one infectious disease doctor in Omaha is looking at how can halotherapy impact people, and has there been damage, post COVID-19, whether there's any lung damage or not. So there's people that are definitely interested in it. And I think that's a lot about what Cheryl is looking for in terms of what kind of studies. Obviously, people want to participate, and if you know doctors or you have relationships in hospitals and how we can formulate things, I think that would be part of one of the groups in the SPA group. But yeah.
Well, you're getting more questions in than what we're getting through here, so we've got another like 40 odd to get through. Would you suggest using a movable partition or permanent partition to separate individuals?
Some places do that. I think it's about having the space for distancing. There are places that have designed salt rooms where they have built-in partitions. Some get opaque, freestanding, and put them into chairs. But keep in mind, just because you have that, it's kind of like, is it like the new sneeze guard? I think people just need to understand, and we all have to kind of feel this out. But for sure, I think we need to have physical distancing. And then we need to, I think, help evaluate having strangers in a room. I know somebody asked a question about, are there going to be larger rooms, smaller rooms? I think this is evolving, and I don't know that we need to make any huge decisions right now about how your new business model is going to be in terms of getting into the business. If someone asked, large rooms, there's benefits. And I guess that's something that we're going to have to evolve to. Yeah.
Oh, someone's asking what disinfectants. I think we've covered that. Yeah. What do we know about salt interaction and other viruses in general?
Cheryl, are you there? Is she still on? I know that there's been some of the research. Yep, there you are.
Salt interaction and other viruses in general.
Yeah, so we're still gathering all the research and the data, with the whole COVID on everybody's mind. I'm kind of backtracking from there and pulling as much information as I can, compiling that, and then what I'd like to do is take that information and then maybe do an additional module on just that exact concept, because there's so much information that I need to compile first, and then I'd like to be able to disseminate that back as soon as I gather it up. Okay,
excellent. Maybe a question relating to that. Do we need to adjust, and please excuse me, I've been busy with technical things and answering questions, so I'm not sure whether some of these have been answered. Do we need to adjust the temperature or humidity in a room at this time?
Yeah, I mean, humidity, you don't want the humidity, to Carol's point, where the humidity levels, nothing should be changed. Temperature, I know that there have been some facilities that keep it on the cooler side and give people blankets to cover up. I just caution about the blankets that are being utilized, and if you're going to, how that's going to go. So there's been some evidence that warmer temperatures, viruses don't live so great at. That's been some reality and research to that. We don't know that about the COVID, but there is business models, science models around that. But you don't need to keep your salt room cool, just comfortable. It's about the experience. Mm-hmm. That doesn't impact it.
Okay. What about toys in a children's room? Should we take them out? They're saying, probably sounds like it from the discussion.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can we say salt therapy strengthens the respiratory system so it can be used for increasing immune system and therefore can help with prevention should the virus emerge again?
Yeah, there is some of the data around some of that. And there's a new article that Dr. Laish just forwarded over that we're kind of diving into because of how it works to a certain ways of how the lung function is. Cheryl, that was the article that Dr. Laish had sent that we kind of have to dive into. So that'll be something that we'll have to circle back with in terms of the languaging on that. Obviously, there are ways for people to say things about what, again, folks, while we want to be evidence-based, and this is more to what we were saying earlier, there are stories to share. There are people that have halotherapy impacts. There's some studies, there's some evidence, there's some models. Again, this is a spa and wellness modality. And I think that's part of that line about being essential or non-essential. So as we move forward with getting more of the evidence and that we could relate it directly, and we consider some other studies, for example, the double-blind study that was done in Israel with a halotherapy room and with pre-asthmatic children, there are ways of languaging things. We just need to be careful. There was a recent company who was talking about COVID-19 with some type of saline type of solution and making claims of it killing COVID-19, and the FDA really came down hard on them. So we do need to come up with the right languaging, and I think that is what we talked about. What are the guidelines, the next recommended guidelines? There will be something about the languaging on that as well.
Leo or Shimon, do you have recommendations on how to best clean the surfaces and exchange the air in your salt booths without damaging surfaces? Salt booths.
So for salt booths, there's no real need to exchange any air. You have one person sitting it at a time. Afterwards, if you want to keep the door open to allow it to air out, I would space out the sessions so that you have a period of time between sessions so that someone can go inside and clean it and disinfect it. Booths made out of wood, plastic, or the glass parts of our glass booth, again, cause the virus is pretty much easy to kill. You can use any detergent, even soap and water. If you use any disinfectants, follow the instructions on the bottle. We've used some EPA registered natural products that were sold through Get Salted, but right now, factory sold out for, I believe until May. But there are lots of products that you can use for plastic and glass and the wood surfaces. Just since those are common surfaces, you can simply read the back of the bottle to see what's safe for use, and then just follow the directions. Some of them will tell you to keep the surface wet for a little bit. Some will just say wipe on, wipe off. But again, soap and water or standard detergents will work against the virus as well.
Okay. There's a few other questions based around booths. One, Lisa was asking, I'm planning on opening a halotherapy space this summer, pending COVID. Would it be wise to say that the larger halotherapy rooms will not be as desirable opposed to a 1 or 2 person room or booth?
I don't think that's a real question about what's going to be desirable. I think we have so many facilities out there throughout North America and around that have larger salt rooms. I think while there's going to be some social distancing going on, physical distancing, I do think that's something that's going to evolve. I think, there is going to be ways about how smaller rooms can be utilized, families, private experiences that are going on. So I think it really depends on a lot of different factors for people in terms of what they're going to be doing. Larger salt room, again, some people on here have them, they use them for events. And as we are still physically distancing, I think there will be some impact to that to a degree. But I think we need to just get over this initial phase that we're in. Cheryl, was there something that you were going to say?
Yes, I wanted to just add that I think that it's what we've learned now with this virus is it may shape some of the design of the group salt rooms in the future. There are, ways that you can increase I guess what I want to say is you can put up different kinds of dividers between where people are seated so that it's not just completely open airspace and not, but it's got to be done in a certain way. So the chairs have to be aligned in a certain position relative to the equipment so that you're not affecting the dispersion of dry salt aerosol. And there may be some retrofitting that can be done with many of the existing salt rooms.
Yep. Yeah, and I think too, that's where the ventilation in rooms like that really make a difference. How do you get the salt aerosol to reach everybody? So there is some specific design things. But I do think that we are moving. I think, you have a lot of spas. I know that I've spoken to people recently where there's a lot of massage therapists that have other types of rooms. And there are people looking at retrofitting or getting a salt booth or looking for more of a individualized, personalized type of a session. And so I do think that there's, as Carol said, I think we're going to see some shifting going on. Yeah, Craig.
Just another one in the chat, actually. How much time in between sessions are you suggesting? I did find another one in here asking the same question. How much time in between sessions?
Well, I think part of that depends on your air exchange. So, depending on how powerful your CFM of your exhaust is kind of going to dictate, what the cubic, what the airspace needs to get handled in a time frame. If you're set up where you can do 4 air exchanges in an hour, then your air exchange would be 15 minutes in a larger room, or depending on just what your CFM is. In terms of the disinfectant that you're using, in terms of the surfaces, I think that's what Shimon was saying, that you have to take a look at what the disinfectant is actually saying for how long it takes, and it should be saying it on their labels. Some of them are fairly quickly, some of them may say a couple of minutes. In terms of the scheduling and the sessions, I think part of that is more about as you're gearing and relaunching, you want to manage your traffic flow. So when a session starts, when it's over, people coming in a door, people going out a door, do you need to stagger some of your rooms differently or surface your services and what you provide? So I think there is some, that's going to vary for every facility and how they need to take a look at that. It's also depending on how frequent and what your capacities are.
An interesting suggestion here. Can you consider producing generic STA videos with proper messaging and vocabulary that we can confidently use on our Facebook pages? If video is now key, maybe the info cards can become videos. What do you think?
Yeah. I mean,
interesting.
I mean, we're only limited to our own resources with people and staff and others and volunteers and such. But I know that we've been doing a lot of posting, I think, by doing some video ones, coming up with a media kit in terms of coming up with things that people can be posting locally, or some educational videos, or some TED Talk type videos. Absolutely. And I think we should do a better job of getting the tribe to participate in that, and how we can more share some of these things together. So absolutely, we'll have to take a look at how we can be proactive with that.
Well, I keep saying the same. That if everybody gets people to share experiences and their testimonial and how the benefits, and particularly now we're seeing Oksana and a few other people said that they've survived the COVID right now. They get these stories. Everybody can use them. It's not selfishly, oh, it's my testimonial. It should be an industry-wide group sort of social proof that everybody could use, because it's just benefiting the industry, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And I think, I think people just need to participate too. I mean, I see some great discussions often in the Face group page. I think, there's a lot of people doing a lot of videos with other people. I think we just need to figure out how to take that to the next level.
What about those who know?
Yeah, Carol.
Can I just add something real quickly?
Yeah.
Hi.
Yeah.
I just wanted to add something very quickly in terms of the testimonials. Certainly, it'll be very helpful to get those from all around the United States. But in regards to the salt room owners, I think it's very important to understand that local testimonials are the most powerful and the most believable.
Yep. Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Those Himalayan salt domes that they use in spas, should you use them or not use them?
I mean,
Salt foot domes.
yeah, no, I'm familiar with them. I mean, yeah, it depends on how people are using them and what they're claiming them for. I still haven't seen, and others have not seen, evidence of what people claim salt lamps to do or heating Himalayan salt. We still see people out there marketing and advertising things that are unfounded or making claims. And so on one hand, I know people sell salt lamps and some of the domes, how people might be using them in an operation and what they're claiming, I think is where the concern is. I'm not aware of salt domes doing any kind of detox work. I look forward to Dr. Nia Banks to at some point do some study of touching Himalayan salt stones and things like that actually do something to the skin or whatnot. But I think it depends on how they position it and how they're marketing it.
Right. Have any salt rooms been visited by federal or local health agencies?
I wouldn't know if they have or haven't unless somehow I knew about them. Someone told me. I don't know of any recently. I do know that Lori Adams in Wisconsin, before there was a shutdown, and she was still able to provide some service. Somebody called the police on them for being opened. I think that there has been in the past, there was a facility that was making claims and needed to change their languaging on their website and such because they got an order from the local state health department for a cease and desist. But other than that, I haven't heard anything, at least that I'm aware of. I don't know, Carol, have you heard of anything?
No, I haven't.
Yeah.
Well, that's
So,
a good. Well, that's a good thing.
yes.
We don't want to hear cases of that. Okay, well, if you've got any more, we're coming towards about the last 4 or 5 questions. If anybody's got any more questions at all, please do make sure that you put those in the Q&A right now. Deborah Tock was on the chat saying that she recovered from COVID. Did she use salt therapy while ill? If she's still on, if she could just put in the chat whether you did, Deborah. You were using salt therapy when you were ill. How much time in between sessions are you suggesting? There was another one about how much time between clients in a salt booth. It might be the same related question.
Yeah, I think we kind of answered that. You got to look at what disinfectant says, etc.
And then the same question on, is it safe to use soap and water or disinfectant on the unfinished wood surfaces of a salt booth? I think that's...
Shimon? Yeah.
All of our salt booth surfaces are finished. Even the ones without stains do have a seal on it. Soap and water is safe to use on the wood surfaces.
Yeah, great, thanks.
How do you clean a salt floor? Was that answered before?
Yes. Although somebody wants to be a millionaire if we invent a way to disinfect.
Right, yeah.
But
Shimon, you'll have to think of that one.
Well, there is...
Just pour water on it and then wait till it goes away and put more salt.
Right. Well, there is, without getting too much into it, there is some titanium oxide sealant types of materials that's out there that coat surfaces that commercial places are putting in. There are air scrubbers. But in terms of actually there is some chemical with titanium dioxide and anastase, which is what paint is often made of something that sticks, and then this mineral substrate. And there's supposed to be some evidence around that, but that's still not yet proven. Anyway.
I think it's going to be a case. I think it's going to be a case with a lot of businesses that originally their mission statement. Often, businesses used to put their mission statement on the wall, didn't they? I think people. I've seen it already. How you like this is our cleanliness statement. This is what we do daily, weekly, monthly. I've seen a lot of businesses around us that go in with the electrostatic cleaning to say we are now clean. I think that's going to be very prevalent moving forward, isn't it?
Well, I think you do. I think you got to get it visible in front of people, just like when you used to, they used to have old school where they had somebody who signed off on the bathroom being cleaned every half hour or whatnot. You want to not only have the perception of it in terms of how it looks, in terms of it being a visual thing, an optic, but it's got to be in your communication. It's got to be in your education. It is something that you want to be mindful of. I mean, it used to be interesting where you had signs in restaurants that could never figure it out, where it says employees must wash their hands. And that actually was something you had to apply. Now it's, we have to tell everybody to, but I just think it's more of being conscious and being aware. And I think we have to take our customers, the people in their experience, for however real it is for many people, and what opinions they might have or where they come from. I think we need to, as Carol said, we just need to keep talking about salt therapy, halotherapy, as we always have. I think there's an opportunity to create a larger audience right now and educate people a little bit more. And we'll do some more things like this as well.
I mean, I'm just thinking aloud here. We don't have any more questions, but I just wanted this thought just just came to us from a marketing point of view. So if you think about it, salt rooms, there's not necessarily a lot of the clinical data on the benefits of salt, but we know from anecdotal, it's good, helps, all the rest of it. We don't need to talk about that. But literally, a lot of questions come through. Well, how can we promote our salt room as being the place to go and for this or that? I think it's time to start thinking maybe a bit beyond just the salt service, that you can be seen as the local center for respiratory hygiene, as well as what's that word I forget,
immune support.
Immune support, and be the facility local for not just salt therapy for the respiratory, but for the immune support, which could then lead to, Dr. Nia, I'm sure you segue into this. This is just coming from my thought process here, that you can go into supplements, into further advice, into other things, and be that support. I mean, you could then reach out to first responders.
I think this is an opportune time for that. I think we have had the advantage in that the salt therapy was a bridge between the spa and the medical side. And so it's natural that we would still offer it. We've been able to offer it at no cost. We're not charging for it for those who come in for medical treatment as an add-on service. And that builds awareness. And we're still advertising that first responders, nurses, healthcare professionals can come in at no cost for a treatment. And we're not touting it as a therapy. We're touting it as anxiety relief, stress relief, and respiratory hygiene. And then once you have those professionals who have experienced it, someone came in Saturday and said, I've always been congested. I never knew I could breathe this clearly. Once you have them come in and they make that statement, then we'll have more awareness about what it can do. Because many people don't even know what salt therapy is, but it's a great opportunity to offer it. And we've been offering it at no charge because we can do it in addition to another service. There is an article coming out in Baltimore Magazine next month about salt therapy. They came and visited the spa and spent some time in the salt therapy chamber. So I think it's a great time to build awareness. We have videos on our website about salt therapy and its benefits. And that's how we've kept the spa staff engaged while they rest in place, by creating videos.
I mean, it's an excellent sort of topic. Dr. Nia, stay on, because there's some people now jumping in asking, well, explain the verbiage to promote immune support. And then people are asking, what retail products would you recommend for health and wellness for immune support? I'm just thinking you can roll this now conceptually into a lot more than just salt because of what's gone on. People are going to be thinking more of respiratory hygiene, wellness, how can I increase my immune system, all these things. And a salt room could become that focal point in the local community for that.
We've pulled back all of the money we were spending on advertisement and public relations for the plastic surgery part, we've pulled back and spent that energy now on the wellness pillar. Because right now everyone is thinking about, no one's going to be worried about their Botox and their fillers right now.
No.
Or their liposuction or breast augmentation. People are worried about how am I going to prevent becoming infected with the coronavirus? How am I protecting my mental health? Or if I become infected, how do I best improve my chances of recovering quickly? So we're talking about wellness and mental health. So because we don't have the studies about prevention, we can talk about symptomatic relief for congestion, because part of any viral infections, you have the virus infection and then you have the inflammation afterwards. Even after you're no longer infectious, you still have the inflammation in your lungs that you need to treat, that you need to have some symptomatic relief from. So we talked about symptomatic relief, and we talked about a lot of anxiety relief and relaxation and stress management for the healthcare professionals. So we've offered that at no charge, and we've used our PR company and our social media platforms to promote that offering. So we've not encouraged first responders to come out when there's a stay-at-home order. We've said when you no longer have a stay-at-home order, we're still going to honor that offer. You come in at no charge.
I think it's an interesting. You're probably chomping at the bit to say something, Leo. I think it's an interesting concept, but because it goes beyond that. This is just a salt room. You know, we are now a facility can do X, Y, and Z, and with this holistic approach, you're looking at a situation that you're using as a bridge, as an adjunct to existing treatments and services that you offer.
Correct.
Not everybody is lucky enough to be able to give everything away for free.
Right.
But what studies it's rather like a bit of a study. What you know, the results, from a mental point of view, from you know, the results that they're getting by you offering it would be interesting to share with
absolutely, and the testimonials. We'd be happy to share the testimonials. But we also in our salt room offer IV hydration. So our salt room is built out as a dual purpose. It has 3 chairs for salt therapy, but it also has hooks for IV hydration. Now, we have immune support IVs, IV micronutrients. So IVs that you place and you run a bag, and that could be either we have one for immune support, we have some for jet lag, we have some for dehydration, some for focus, and some for weight loss. Now, the most popular one right now is immune support. It's vitamin C.
Yeah. It's basically just putting now I'm familiar with this because I work with a lot of the anti-aging doctors in the space, the A4M, which I'm sure you're familiar with. But how a salt room, just talking on that, how easy or difficult would it be for a salt facility owner to be able to offer that service as well locally? What would they do? How would they go about doing that or making that happen? Do you have to tie up with a doctor? How would a local salt facility be able to play in that arena?
So we have a nurse that runs the salt room and also places the IVs. The IVs could probably be placed by a medical assistant as well, but you would need a medical health professional, either medical assistant, nursing assistant, or nurse to place the IV. But we did not create the protocols ourselves. We partnered with a company called Thrive, who works locally in Baltimore. And this is a company that's run by 2 ER physicians who do, remote or this mobile IV hydration. So they work in salons and spas, they'll come to your house. And it's a fairly popular concept. So probably in each city, there's some company that's promoting these remote IV hydration services, and we partner with them for the protocols.
I would, one of the things that I was talking with somebody recently too, Dr. Banks, and it ties into what Craig was saying. We mentioned this once before, where there are certified training programs to do spirometer tests. And while salt therapy facility members or owners really, we can't recommend and diagnose and any kind of protocols necessarily, even though there are some that have been done and some over in Europe, as Carol knows. But it'll be interesting where if salt therapy or some of our facilities are known for that respiratory wellness, to what you talk about, the mental side, the respiratory wellness, there could be new practices and protocols so that we can have people get the right kind of measures. I know that if Cheryl's looking for some new clinical studies, there are unique ways to design studies, even to measure quality of life, that become published, that get sponsored by physicians, that then you could utilize to really point to true benefits that have gone through the right process, even if it's quality of life.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Absolutely.
the train of thought we're just talking about now is what you taught, probably people have heard the word pivoting, pivoting, businesses pivoting. Dr. Banks, that was phenomenal input. Thank you. It's like pivoting. Will a standalone salt facility be making the same money they were prior COVID-19? Who knows? We don't know. I think some will, some won't. I think you have to be realistic about that. And you look at how can you pivot? How can you change? How can you rethink, invent your business? And I think if whoever's on the call is just doing salt alone and nothing else, it's time to pivot. It's time to think, what other services, what other things can we involve in our business to bring in money to survive?
There are many people that are involved and that are on the call, have been on the call, that are doing that. There's others that are doing IV therapy. There are those that are doing certified health coaching, pH balancing. The video that we'll be showing at some point here with Donna Krouse, they've got flotation, they've got infrared sauna, and they have 3 salt rooms. They were sharing some really great information about how prominent salt therapy has become. And so I think there is that mix. I think people are looking for different things. There's vibroacoustic sound therapy, a lot of different things that people are really going to be looking at. But to your point, I know Ashley, who I guess wasn't able to be on the call, a big part of her business has been massage and skincare with her salt rooms.
I'm familiar with everybody who does those things.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people have put in cryotherapy and all these different adjunctive services or treatments. I'm just thinking aloud right now in terms of, because on everybody's mind is what Dr. Banks was talking about, the mental health, the people thinking about how can I overcome this thing fast if I get it? How can I be proactive to not get it? And so this topic of respiratory health and immunology and all these topics are hot right now to jump on. That's what I was thinking, as opposed to let's add massage. These topics are hot right now that you could pivot to right now. I'd be thinking, how can I get that IV medical person in so I can start marketing what Dr. Banks was talking about? I'd be thinking, how can I get the supplements in? How can I do these things based around and get everybody in my town coming to me, because I'm the main person for respiratory health and immune, that word I keep forgetting, the immune.
Yeah, I'd like to say.
I'm just thinking aloud, Carol. I'm just thinking thinking aloud.
I think it's important. That's where all these ideas start, thinking out loud. But I think that also it's time, okay, so you're this one person and you want to be this hub. It's time for collaboration. It's time to work with others in your community who may already be offering some aspect of this. These types of different providers can become a collective. It's, so that you are sort of sharing your expertise and your abilities. And, often in a community, I know here where I live, you can actually sort of go to a certain part of town where there's like clusters of massage therapists and acupuncturists and registered dietitians. The one thing we haven't mentioned here in terms of this whole wellness thing is we also just should be mindful that there's a giant shift to a plant-based diet in terms of optimal health. This is not a small fringe thing anymore. It's a big thing. So, being aware, if you want to be a part of that general awareness or a resource for your community, it really means you have to become versed at what exists in your community and what the trends are.
No,
Yep.
very good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, very cool.
I think we're good for. Thanks, Carl. Yeah, we're good for. I think we've probably answered all these questions, Leo.
All right. Well, you know, for obviously, thank you everybody for participating. Those of you who are on, we'll make this available. A lot of resources to come. Taking time out in the day. Thank you, Craig. Thank you, everybody, all the panelists, Dr. Banks, Carol, great to see you, Shimon, and well, hopefully Ashley will see some of this and we'll get some of her input as well, and keep moving it forward. Stay tuned for some of the releases of the video and some of the other things that we talked about. Craig, is there a way that you can capture all of the chat or the Q&A?
Yeah, I have it.
All right, cool. All right, everybody, stay safe, be healthy, and hopefully we'll see you soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Take good care.
See you, Cheryl.
Bye-bye.
Bye, Dr. Bank. Bye, Carol.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.